November 22nd, 1933, Grand Prairie, Texas. 12 police officers surround a stolen Ford V8, rifles raised, confident they've finally cornered Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie Parker sits in the passenger seat, cigarette dangling from her lips, pump shotgun resting across her lap like it belongs there. Officers close in, 30 feet, 20, 10, shouting commands that echo off brick storefronts. Clyde Barrow grips the wheel, engine idling, eyes calculating escape angles that don't exist. In 10 minutes, 4 of those officers will be dead on the pavement. In 10 minutes, witnesses will report hearing something worse than gunfire, a woman's laughter cutting through the chaos. Bonnie's cigarette ash falls onto the shotgun barrel as she lifts it toward the window. The Barrow Gang already has 9 murders and a $15,000 bounty on their heads. These officers think numbers give them advantage, 12 against 2. They're about to learn what made Bonnie and Clyde America's most dangerous couple. The mystery isn't how they escaped, it's what made Bonnie laugh while pulling the trigger. By November 1933, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow had spent 2 years running across Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri, leaving a trail of robberies and bodies that made front-page news from Dallas to Chicago. The public saw them as Depression-era Robin Hoods, young lovers thumbing their noses at banks and lawmen, rebels against a system that had failed ordinary people. Bonnie even published poetry in newspapers, romanticizing their crimes with verses about dying together in a hail of bullets. The reality was uglier. 9 people dead by late 1933, most of them lawmen who'd gotten too close. Clyde preferred Browning automatic rifles and Ford V8s, firepower and speed over stealth. Bonnie chain-smoked Lucky Strikes during planning sessions, the cigarette steadying her nerves before robberies. That famous photograph, Bonnie standing beside a Ford, pistol in hand, cigarette in mouth, leg propped on the bumper, was staged for newspapers, but it captured something true about her: defiance wrapped in smoke and violence. The Barrow Gang killed their first officer in April 1932, and after that, there was no turning back. America loved the idea of Bonnie and Clyde. The truth would have terrified them. In October 1933, a Dallas County Sheriff's deputy approached Emma Parker with an offer that made her sick to consider. Her daughter Bonnie was wounded, hunted, dying slowly from a car crash that left her leg badly burned. The deputy's proposal was simple: arrange a meeting, tip off police, and maybe Bonnie survives the arrest. Emma was desperate enough to say yes. She set the meeting for November 22nd, 1933, in Grand Prairie, Texas, a vacant lot 3 blocks from her house. The sheriff assembled a 12-man team: rifles, shotguns, 2 Thompson submachine guns. They studied a hand-drawn diagram showing positions around the lot, overlapping fields of fire, nowhere to run. During the briefing, one officer asked about Bonnie. The sheriff waved him off. "She's just a girl riding with him. Clyde's the one who'll fight." They planned for Clyde Barrow, the convicted killer who'd escaped from prison and declared war on Texas law. They didn't plan for what Bonnie had become in 2 years of running and killing. Fear makes men careful, but assumptions make them dead. November 22nd, 1933, 6 in the morning. Bonnie and Clyde left their Dallas hideout in a stolen Ford V8, heading toward Grand Prairie. Bonnie smoked 3 cigarettes in the first 20 minutes, lighting each from the one before, hands moving in a rhythm Clyde had seen before every job. He glanced over. "You want to turn back?" She didn't look at him. "I need to see Mama, even if it's a trap." They loaded their arsenal methodically: 2 Browning automatic rifles, 3 pistols, 2 shotguns, over 200 rounds of ammunition. Clyde drove slowly, scanning roof lines, checking parked cars, watching for the glint of rifle barrels in windows. The cigarette pack sat on the dashboard, 2 left. Bonnie reached for it, lit another, smoke curling against the windshield. Cold November air leaked through cracks around the windows. The engine rumbled low and steady. Somewhere behind them, church bells rang for morning services. Bonnie's leg, scarred from the August crash, ached in the cold. She didn't mention it. Love makes you stupid even when you know better. 200 yards from the ambush site, Bonnie spotted a boot behind a fence. Clyde saw cigarette smoke rising from a rooftop. Neither of them slowed down. At 10:30, 12 officers crouched in position around the vacant lot in Grand Prairie. Weapons ready, adrenaline high. Emma Parker stood near her house, stomach twisted with the knowledge of what she'd done. The Ford V8 approached from the east, slowed, circled the block twice. Clyde spotted the ambush immediately, a boot visible behind a wooden fence, the shape of a man on a roof. Too many cars parked on a Tuesday morning. Instead of fleeing, he did something the officers didn't expect. He accelerated directly toward the thickest cluster of them. Bonnie pulled the shotgun onto her lap and used the car's lighter to ignite a fresh cigarette, her movements calm, mechanical. Officers stepped into the street, rifles raised, shouting commands that nobody inside the Ford could hear over the engine. Clyde floored the accelerator. Bonnie rolled down her window, cigarette clenched between her teeth, and leveled the shotgun. They didn't run because running meant dying slowly on some empty road with nothing to show for it. The first shots fired weren't from the police. They came from Bonnie's shotgun, and they didn't miss. Bonnie fired first. Double-barrel shotgun, both barrels, point-blank range. An officer 15 feet away dropped instantly, chest torn open. Clyde swerved hard left, tires screaming. Bonnie reloaded without looking, cigarette somehow still clamped in her teeth, ash scattering across the dashboard. Officers opened fire, bullets punching through the Ford's thin doors, spider-webbing the windshield, ricocheting off the frame. Clyde drove in tight figure eights, making them moving targets, while Bonnie fired one-handed out the passenger window. Two more officers fell within seconds. Chest shots, close range, no hesitation. Civilians watching from nearby houses would later tell reporters they heard something worse than gunfire, a woman laughing, high, clear, unmistakable. Bonnie's cigarette ash fell onto blood splattered across the car door. Clyde grabbed the Browning automatic rifle from the back seat, steered with his knees, and unleashed a 20-round burst that shredded the fence officers were using for cover. The fourth officer died trying to reload behind a parked car, caught in the open when Bonnie's shotgun found him. Cordite smoke choked the air, screaming, glass breaking, engine roaring. The Ford burst through the police line doing 50 miles an hour, Bonnie still laughing, cigarette still lit, impossibly. Officers fired after them, but the angle was wrong, and the car was too fast. If you're hooked now, wait. It gets crazier. Violence becomes reflex when you've crossed certain lines, and Bonnie and Clyde had crossed those lines so long ago, they couldn't even see them anymore. Clyde pushed the riddled Ford toward the Oklahoma border, speedometer touching 70 on dirt roads that turned the car into a rattling death trap. 47 bullet holes stitched across the body, doors, roof. Bonnie's laughter faded, replaced by silence so complete it felt like vacuum. She lit another cigarette with hands that were steady now, adrenaline fading into something colder. Clyde's left ear bled from a bullet graze he didn't notice until Bonnie pointed at it without speaking. They inventoried damage. 8 rounds of ammunition left, radiator leaking, windshield gone, back window shattered. 10 miles outside Grand Prairie, they pulled into a farmhouse and stole another car at gunpoint, transferring weapons while the terrified farmer watched. Bonnie took a pack of Lucky Strikes from the kitchen table before leaving. The cigarette pack from the ambush sat empty in the Ford's ashtray. 3 butts stubbed out, the rest scattered as ash across blood-stained seats. By noon, radio broadcasts screamed the news. 4 officers dead in Grand Prairie ambush. Bonnie and Clyde escape. Manhunt intensified. Bonnie sat in the passenger seat of the stolen Chevrolet, smoking, staring at nothing. Clyde kept checking the rearview mirror. Neither spoke for 3 hours. Somewhere in those hours, Bonnie realized she didn't feel anything. No fear, no regret, no triumph. Just the taste of tobacco and the memory of how easy it had been to pull the trigger while laughing. The killing gets easier, but the silence inside gets louder until it's all you hear. November 23rd, 1933, newspapers across America ran headlines that made Bonnie and Clyde's names synonymous with something darker than robbery. Bonnie laughed during massacre. Witnesses from Grand Prairie gave detailed statements. A woman smoking a cigarette, grinning, firing a shotgun like she was at target practice. One witness told reporters, "She wasn't scared, she enjoyed it." Emma Parker read the accounts in her kitchen, hands shaking, understanding finally that her daughter was beyond saving. The Dallas Sheriff's Office released new wanted posters. Bonnie Parker's face, mid-laugh, cigarette visible, labeled armed and extremely dangerous. Public opinion shifted overnight. The romantic outlaw narrative crumbled. These weren't Depression-era Robin Hoods. These were cold-blooded killers who laughed while murdering lawmen. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover personally assigned additional agents to the case. The combined bounty jumped to $25,000, more money than most Americans would see in a lifetime. Photographs of the 4 dead officers ran in newspapers. Their widows gave interviews. The Grand Prairie ambush became the moment America stopped romanticizing Bonnie and Clyde and started demanding their deaths. In Washington, Hoover made a phone call to a legendary Texas Ranger named Frank Hamer, a man who'd killed more outlaws than any lawman alive. The offer was simple: unlimited resources, no rules, one objective: bring them in dead. The moment you laugh at death, you've already died inside. Bonnie and Clyde just didn't know it yet. Frank Hamer was 50 years old in January 1934 when he accepted the assignment to hunt Bonnie and Clyde. He'd killed 53 men in his career as a Texas Ranger, most of them outlaws who'd made the mistake of drawing first. Hamer didn't chase criminals. He studied them like a biologist studying specimens. For 102 days, he tracked Bonnie and Clyde's movements across 5 states, building a pattern from gas station receipts, witness statements, and one detail nobody else had noticed: Bonnie's cigarettes. Lucky Strikes. The same pack found at 6 different crime scenes. Hamer realized she smoked before killing, during planning sessions, after escapes. It was ritual, not nerves. He tracked cigarette purchases through informants in small-town stores across Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. A young woman buying Lucky Strikes, paying cash, always in a hurry. The purchases formed a route: Louisiana to Texas to Oklahoma and back, a loop they ran every 3 weeks. Hamer pinned a map to his hotel room wall, marking each cigarette purchase with a red pin. The pattern emerged like a constellation. Between December 1933 and April 1934, Bonnie and Clyde killed 5 more officers during attempted arrests and robberies. Each crime scene yielded Lucky Strike butts. Hamer studied autopsy reports, witness statements, ballistics. He discovered something the newspapers missed. Bonnie killed more officers than Clyde. Her shotgun, close range, no hesitation. Habits are breadcrumbs for those patient enough to follow them. In April 1934, Hamer learned one final detail from an informant. Bonnie's father was buried in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. She visited the grave every month, always around the 20th. April 1934, Bienville Parish, Louisiana. Frank Hamer set his trap near the cemetery where Bonnie's father lay buried. He recruited Henry Methvin, a Barrow Gang member, with a simple offer: immunity in exchange for route, timing, and vehicle description. Methvin gave it all. They'd drive Highway 154 on May 23rd, tan Ford Vi-8, Bonnie riding passenger, heading to the cemetery before noon. Hamer assembled a 6-man posse: Texas Rangers, Louisiana officers, men who understood this wasn't an arrest, it was an execution. They positioned themselves in brush along Highway 154, overlapping fields of fire, over 150 rounds of ammunition ready. Hamer's notebook showed Bonnie's cigarette timeline. Purchases tracked across 3 states, the pattern that led them here. The last entry read simply, May 23rd. Unlike the Grand Prairie ambush, this trap accounted for Bonnie's violence, not just Clyde's. No warnings, no surrender demands. Just overwhelming firepower delivered faster than they could react. The plan was clinical: open fire simultaneously, empty every weapon, reload if necessary. Louisiana heat pressed down. Cicadas screamed in the trees. 6 men waited in brush that smelled of mud and decay, sweat soaking through their shirts, fingers resting on triggers. Fair fights are for fools. Execution is for legends. At 9:15 a.m. on May 23, 1934, a tan Ford Vi-8 appeared on Highway 154, heading toward the cemetery at 40 miles per hour. Bonnie sat in the passenger seat, between her fingers, a cigarette, unlit. She was reaching for matches when the shooting started. The posse fired 130 rounds in 16 seconds. No warning. No chance. The Ford V8 absorbed bullet after bullet, windshield exploding, doors shredding, tires bursting, frame buckling under the sustained barrage. Bonnie died instantly, multiple shots to the chest and head, the unlit cigarette falling from her fingers. Clyde died reaching for the Browning automatic rifle beside him, never firing a shot, cut down mid-motion. The Ford rolled forward into a ditch, smoking, riddled, glass and metal twisted beyond recognition. Silence fell like a curtain. Hamer approached slowly, revolver still drawn. He found Bonnie's body slumped against the door, cigarette pack in her lap. Half empty, none of them lit. The cigarette between her dead fingers was pristine, unburned, waiting for a match that never came. Within hours, photographs of the bullet-riddled bodies appeared on front pages nationwide. The images were graphic, brutal, final. Bonnie's funeral in Dallas drew 16,000 mourners, despite everything she'd done. People wanted to see the woman who'd laughed while killing, wanted to understand how someone so young could become something so terrible. They died like they lived, surrounded, outgunned, defiant to the end. Emma Parker received her daughter's possessions from the death car: clothes, a hairbrush, half a pack of Lucky Strikes. Investigators re-interviewed survivors from the November 1933 Grand Prairie ambush after Bonnie and Clyde's deaths. Every officer confirmed the same story. Bonnie fired first, laughed throughout the 10-minute gunfight, showed no fear or hesitation. Coroner reports proved that all 4 dead officers had shotgun wounds, Bonnie's weapon. Clyde killed nobody that day, just drove and provided suppressing fire with the Browning automatic rifle. Emma Parker gave one final interview to reporters, voice hollow. "That wasn't my daughter anymore. That was something else wearing her face." A Grand Prairie officer's widow displayed a photograph at Bonnie's funeral. Bonnie mid-laugh during the ambush, taken by a civilian photographer from a second-story window. The public saw it and understood. This wasn't a girl forced into crime by love. This was an equal partner who'd grown to love violence. Bonnie's poetry was found in the death car, a final poem about dying together, romantic and delusional. The most dangerous people are those with nothing left to lose. Bonnie Parker lost herself somewhere between Depression-era poverty and the moment she first pulled a trigger. By Grand Prairie, there was nothing left to save. Forensic investigators analyzed crime scenes connected to Bonnie and Clyde across 5 states. Lucky Strike cigarette butts appeared at 14 murder sites. Bonnie smoked before killings, during planning, after escapes, not from nerves but as ritual. Grand Prairie witnesses all mentioned the same detail. The cigarette never left her mouth during the entire 10-minute gunfight. Somehow, impossibly, it stayed lit while she reloaded, fired, laughed. Psychological profiles emerged posthumously: dissociation, violence addiction, adrenaline dependency. The Texas Ranger Museum in Austin eventually displayed Bonnie's effects, including the half-empty pack of Lucky Strikes from the death car. The unlit cigarette found in her hand at Bienville Parish became evidence that she knew the ambush was final. She'd reached for matches but never struck them. Between 1934 and 1967, Bonnie was romanticized in films and books, the cigarette detail conveniently omitted. Hollywood preferred the tragic lover's narrative to the truth, a woman who discovered she liked killing and stopped pretending otherwise. Small habits reveal larger truths about who we become. Bonnie's cigarette habit tracked her transformation from waitress to killer. Modern forensic analysis proved what Grand Prairie survivors always claimed: Bonnie killed more officers than Clyde. The cigarettes marked every scene. Bonnie Parker died at 23, having killed 9 people and wounded 12 more. The Grand Prairie laughter became her defining legacy. Not her poetry, not her love for Clyde, but the sound of a woman laughing while killing surrounded lawmen. Clyde wanted to be remembered as an outlaw who beat the system. Bonnie wanted to be remembered as a poet who loved desperately. History remembered her as the woman who fired first and laughed last. Every photograph, every witness account mentions the cigarette. It became her symbol, the smoke that curled around her violence, the ritual that preceded her killing. The Texas Ranger Museum display case holds the death car, still riddled with bullet holes, and beside it, under glass, Bonnie's final pack of Lucky Strikes. The unlit cigarette in her dead hand represented a promise unfulfilled, a final smoke that would never be. When you laugh at death, death always gets the last laugh. The cigarette that never lit marked the moment legend became truth. Bonnie Parker wasn't forced into violence. She chose it, refined it, perfected it until pulling a trigger felt as natural as lighting a lucky strike. Grand Prairie proved it. 4 dead officers, 10 minutes of laughter. One woman who'd crossed lines she couldn't uncross. The museum display shows everything. The bullet-riddled Ford, Clyde's Browning automatic rifle, Bonnie's shotgun, and that half-empty pack of cigarettes under glass, preserved like a religious relic. Visitors stare at the cigarettes and try to understand how someone so young became something so terrifying. The answer is simpler than anyone wants to admit. Violence doesn't make you fearless. It makes you empty. And empty people laugh in situations where human beings should scream. The cigarette proved what Bonnie became. The unlit one showed she finally understood the cost.